London never really sleeps. Its nights breathe with color, laughter, and chaos. Beneath the neon lights, the city hums with life. Crowded pubs, thumping music, people chasing moments they'll forget by morning. But amid the flashing lights and spilled drinks, there are those who pause for just a second, look around, and wonder, is this really all there is? That question, quiet, inconvenient, and persistent, is where this story begins. He was just another face in the crowd. James, 26, from Manchester. A good job, decent salary, and a life that looked perfect on social media. Fridays were sacred. Drinks with mates, laughter echoing through narrow London streets, the rhythmic bass of the club swallowing the week's worries. To the world, he was living the dream, free, wild, young. But inside, something felt broken. It started subtly. Sunday mornings hit harder. The hangovers weren't just physical, they were emotional. He'd stare at the ceiling, wondering why he felt so heavy. Maybe I just need something new, he told himself. So he tried everything, new clubs, new people, new distractions. But the emptiness grew louder. One night, after yet another party that promised everything and delivered nothing, James found himself walking home alone. The cold London air bit his face, and for the first time he noticed the silence between the noise. The laughter fading behind him, the hum of the city still alive, but his heart utterly still. He looked up at the sky, dark and vast, and whispered, "Why do I feel like this?" Across the city there was Anna. She was 24, bright, beautiful, confident. Her Instagram was a highlight reel. Rooftop bars, festivals, champagne smiles. But behind those photos was exhaustion. She laughed louder than she felt, danced longer than she wanted to, and kept moving because standing still meant facing herself. One night she came home from a party, heels in hand, makeup smudged, heart racing with anxiety. She sat on her bed, scrolling through photos of strangers who looked just as empty. And for no reason she could explain, she whispered, "God, if you're real, please show me something better than this." Weeks passed. James kept up appearances, but he began searching online late at night. He read about meditation, philosophy, minimalism. One evening he clicked on a video titled, "I left nightlife and found peace in Islam." The thumbnail showed a man around his age, smiling, wearing simple clothes, eyes calm. Curious, James clicked. The man spoke quietly. "I used to party every night. But one morning I woke up and realized I'd filled my life with everything but meaning. Then I read a verse. Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest." That verse changed everything. James paused the video. The words echoed in his head. Hearts find rest. He couldn't remember the last time his heart rested. He replayed that line over and over, not because he believed it, but because he wanted to. The next weekend, he skipped the club. His friends mocked him, calling him old or boring, but he didn't care. That night, instead of noise, he sat in silence. He looked up that verse again, found it in an online Quran translation, and began reading more. The words felt different, poetic yet piercing, gentle yet powerful. Anna's journey took a similar turn. She met a colleague at work, a woman named Fatima who wore a hijab. Anna had always thought religious people were serious, judgmental, disconnected. But Fatima wasn't like that. She was peaceful, grounded, funny. She listened more than she spoke. One afternoon over coffee, Anna asked, "Don't you ever feel like you're missing out?" Fatima smiled and replied, "I used to think I was. Then I realized what everyone else is chasing. Happiness, peace, purpose, Islam already gave me." That sentence stayed with Anna. That night she opened YouTube and searched, "Why are people converting to Islam?" Video after video appeared. White British men and women, some with tattoos, piercings, wild pasts, all saying the same thing. "I found peace in Islam." She watched for hours. Stories of former DJs, models, students, people who once lived the same life she was living now. They talked about prayer, discipline, peace. But what caught her attention most wasn't what they said. It was how they looked. They looked free. James began noticing Muslims everywhere. Taxi driver quietly reciting something under his breath. A colleague stepping aside during lunch to pray. The rhythm of it all intrigued him. The structure, the serenity. He downloaded an app that played the Adhan, the Islamic call to prayer. The first time he heard it, his chest tightened. It felt foreign, yet strangely familiar, like something ancient whispering to him across time. But curiosity turned to conflict. His friends noticed the change. "You're not seriously into that religion stuff, are you?" They joked. "You praying? Come on, mate." He laughed it off, but deep down he felt defensive. He wasn't Muslim, not yet, but something inside him wanted to protect the peace he was beginning to taste. Anna too faced confusion. She tried praying once, mimicking what she saw online, standing, bowing, whispering, "Allahu Akbar." She cried halfway through. Not because she understood the words, but because, for the first time, she wasn't performing for anyone. Days turned to weeks. Both James and Anna, without knowing each other, were walking the same invisible road, one that led away from flashing lights and toward something sacred. One Sunday morning, James decided to visit a mosque. He stood outside for 10 minutes, heart pounding. He expected judgment, maybe rejection, but when he finally stepped inside, an old man smiled, placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Welcome, brother." No one asked him about his past. No one cared what he'd done. They simply welcomed him. He watched as men lined up shoulder to shoulder, standing equal before God. No VIPs, no designer suits, no fake smiles. Just sincerity. When they bowed and touched their foreheads to the ground, James felt something inside him crumble. Pride, ego, noise. He didn't understand the prayer, but he understood its peace. That night he went home and whispered, "God, if this is real, guide me." Anna's moment came soon after. She visited a mosque with Fatima during Ramadan. She watched hundreds of people breaking their fast, strangers sharing food, laughter, kindness. The simplicity of it overwhelmed her. She realized faith wasn't about control. It was about surrender. That night she sat in her room and said her first sincere prayer. "God, if Islam is the truth, bring me to it." In the quiet that followed, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Calm, and that's where their new lives began. Not in noise, but in silence. The journey after that first prayer wasn't easy. The peace James felt in the mosque faded when he stepped back into the world he knew. London didn't change, he did. The same pub still buzzed, the same friends still called. "Mate, we're heading out." "Just one drink," they'd say. The temptation wasn't just about alcohol. It was about belonging. For years he had defined himself by those nights, those people, that noise. Now silence felt foreign, but slowly new rhythms began to replace the old ones. Instead of waking up with a hangover, he woke up before sunrise. Instead of the club's pounding bass, he heard the adhan echo softly from his phone. He started reading about Islam every night, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, the meaning of prayer, the discipline of fasting. Each page felt like a mirror reflecting the parts of himself he'd ignored for years. Anna's change was quieter. She began dressing modestly, not because anyone told her to, but because it felt right. She said it made her feel seen for who she was, not what she looked like. Her colleagues noticed. Some were curious. Others whispered behind her back. "You're too smart for religion," one said. But Anna didn't argue. She'd spent years trying to please everyone. Now she was finally pleasing her soul. Her nights were different now. No loud music, no flashing lights. Just her sitting by the window, reading verses she barely understood but deeply felt. One of them read, "And he found you lost and guided you." She cried reading it. "That's me," she whispered. "That's my story." The more she learned, the more she realized how misunderstood Islam was in the world she grew up in. It wasn't about restrictions. It was about direction. It wasn't about fear. It was about freedom. Freedom from the constant need to impress, to chase, to fill emptiness with noise. But transformation never comes without trials. James's friends started teasing him more openly. "You're not turning Muslim, are you?" They laughed. He forced a smile, but deep down he felt hurt. Why was peace such a strange concept to them? One night, sitting alone, he whispered, "God, I just want truth. I doubt it, whatever it costs." That prayer was answered sooner than he expected. He started visiting the mosque more often. One evening, after a talk about forgiveness, he found himself sitting with a small group of converts. One man, a former DJ from Birmingham, told him, "Brother, I've been where you are. The nights feel empty at first, but then Allah fills them with something better. You just have to stay patient. For the first time, James felt he wasn't alone. During Ramadan, he decided to fast. The first day was hard. Headaches, hunger, fatigue. But by sunset, when he broke his fast with a few dates and water, he felt lighter. "It's strange," he told a friend from the mosque. "I used to drink to feel alive. Now I'm starving and I feel more alive than ever." Anna's transformation deepened too. She attended a Quran class for beginners. The teacher spoke about how Allah forgives endlessly, how every mistake is a chance to return. Those words broke her. Years of guilt, self-doubt, and pain began to fade, but not everyone celebrated her change. Her old friends started disappearing. "You've changed," they said. She smiled softly. "I hope so." There were hard days. Days she questioned herself. Days she missed the old comfort of blending in. But then she'd hear the adhan, "Come to prayer, come to success," and she'd remember why she started. Islam, she learned, wasn't about perfection. It was about intention, about trying, failing, and returning again. As weeks passed, both James and Anna officially embraced Islam. For James, it happened quietly after Friday prayers. The Imam stood beside him, smiling as James repeated the Shahada. "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." The words rolled off his tongue easily, but their weight hit him like a storm. It was as if his soul finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. Anna's moment came one evening after Taraweeh prayers in Ramadan. She was surrounded by women, strangers moments ago, sisters now. When she said the Shahada, tears streamed down her face. She described it later. "It felt like my heart had been reset." For both of them, the next chapter wasn't about leaving their past. It was about transforming it. James still walked the same streets, but now he saw them differently. The bars that once drew him in now looked hollow. The laughter that once tempted him now sounded forced. The peace he once searched for outside, he now carried within. He began volunteering at the mosque, helping new converts. "I know how lost you feel," he'd tell them. "But I promise, you're not broken. You're being rebuilt." Anna started a blog called Light After the Night, where she shared her journey, the struggles, the doubts, the beauty. Her words resonated with thousands. Messages poured in from people who felt the same emptiness she once did. "You made me believe change is possible," one woman wrote. For both of them, faith wasn't a finish line. It was the beginning of a lifelong journey. They still stumbled, still faced judgment, still missed old friends sometimes, but they also woke each day with purpose. When James prayed, he didn't always understand every word, but he understood the peace that followed. When Anna wore her hijab in public for the first time, she felt nervous. But then she saw her reflection and smiled. "I finally recognized the woman I'm looking at," she thought. Their old lives hadn't vanished. They had been transformed. The noise that once drowned their thoughts had been replaced with remembrance. The void that once haunted them had been filled with faith. But the world outside hadn't changed. The club still roared, the drinks still flowed, the laughter still echoed. And yet somewhere between all that chaos, a quiet revolution was taking place. People choosing silence over noise, peace over pleasure, God over glamour. James once said to Anna during a convert gathering, "We used to chase nights that never lasted. Now we chase prayers that last forever." And she smiled, replying softly, "Maybe that's what real freedom feels like." The journey wasn't easy. But then again, the best transformations never are. And as their stories intertwined with thousands of others across Britain, a new chapter was being written. One not of rebellion, but of return, because sometimes to find the light, you must first walk through the night. The world around them didn't change overnight. London was still alive with its endless pulse. Laughter spilling from pub doors, taxis racing through wet streets, and crowds chasing the weekend as if eternity depended on it. But for James and Anna, the nights were no longer the same. They had seen the world from the inside and stepped out with open eyes. The sound of the adhan had replaced the sound of bass. The smell of smoke had been traded for the soft scent of prayer mats. Their hearts had learned a new rhythm, one that moved with meaning. James used to dread silence. Now he cherished it. There was something sacred about those quiet moments before dawn, when the city slept and he stood in prayer, whispering words that soothed his heart. The same man who once stumbled home drunk at sunrise now rose early to meet his Lord. Strange, he told a friend one morning after Fajr. How peace was here all along. I just never listened. Anna, too, found beauty in the ordinary. She used to chase grand nights, the perfect dress, the perfect crowd, the perfect moment. Now, her joy came from simplicity, helping at her local mosque, cooking for iftar, smiling at strangers who asked about her scarf. Every act, no matter how small, felt purposeful. Islam gave me back my heart, she said. It didn't change who I was. It reminded me who I could be. But peace doesn't mean perfection. Both still face challenges. Some people from their past mocked their faith. Others avoided them completely. There were days of doubt, days of exhaustion, days when they questioned if they were strong enough to keep going. Yet every time they fell, they found the same truth waiting. Allah's door never closes. One night, James sat with a group of new Muslims after a lecture. A man asked the Imam, "How do I stay strong when the world around me doesn't understand?" The Imam smiled and replied, "Faith is not about fitting in. It's about standing firm. The Prophet himself stood alone once, and yet the world changed because of him." Those words stayed with James. He realized he didn't need everyone to understand him. He just needed to stay true. Anna had her own test. Her mother, though loving, struggled to accept her daughter's new identity. "I raised you to be free," she said one evening, tears in her eyes. "Why cover yourself? Why change everything?" Anna took her mother's hands and whispered, "Mom, I am free. For the first time in my life, I'm free from other people's opinions." It wasn't an argument. It was a revelation. Slowly, with time and kindness, her mother began to see the peace in her daughter's eyes and understood that this change wasn't rebellion. It was healing. Both James and Anna continued to grow. They joined charity projects, helped feed the homeless, and spoke at small community events about their journeys. When they shared their stories, they didn't speak like preachers. They spoke like people who had tasted both worlds. They told the truth that most were too afraid to admit. Pleasure without purpose is just distraction dressed as joy. James said it best in an interview with a Revert organization. "I used to live for the night. Now I live for the light." Across Britain, similar stories were unfolding. From Manchester to Birmingham, from London to Glasgow, people from every background were quietly walking away from nightlife and finding peace in faith. Many weren't raised religiously. Some had never even believed in God. But they all shared one thing, the same deep, aching emptiness that modern life couldn't fill. A study once showed that thousands of Britons convert to Islam every year, many of them young, educated, and once devoted to the party lifestyle. They weren't running from fun. They were running toward meaning. In a world where pleasure was easy but purpose was rare, Islam offered something deeper. Structure, clarity, belonging. It wasn't about losing freedom. It was about redefining it. Real freedom, they realized, isn't doing whatever you want. It's having the strength to walk away from what destroys you. One night, after Taraweeh prayers in Ramadan, James stood outside the mosque, looking at the stars. He thought about his past, the flashing lights, the laughter, the endless chase, and smiled. "I used to think happiness was out there," he said softly, pointing toward the city skyline. "But happiness was here all along." Anna joined him a few moments later, carrying tea from the iftar hall. "You ever miss it?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, I miss who I was supposed to be." They laughed quietly, two souls who had once been lost in the noise, now grounded in silence. Their lives weren't glamorous now, but they were real. They woke each day with purpose, with peace, with a reason. The thrill of the club had been replaced by the tranquility of prayer. The emptiness of the morning after had been replaced by the contentment of the night before. And slowly, their stories began to inspire others. People messaged them, some curious, some skeptical, some secretly longing for the same peace. A young woman from London wrote to Anna saying, "I watched your story. I think I'm ready to change too." A man from Liverpool messaged James saying, "Bro, I think I'm done with this life. I want what you found." It became clear that their transformation wasn't just about them. It was about an entire generation quietly realizing that pleasure without purpose is just pain with glitter. The night scene that once defined modern British youth began to feel different. There were still lights, still crowds, but beneath it more and more young people were questioning. Why am I doing this? What am I really looking for? Why do I feel empty when I have everything? And somewhere in that confusion they would come across a story. Maybe James's, maybe Anna's, maybe another's. And something inside would stir. A spark of faith, a longing for peace, a whisper that said, "There's more than this." James once told a friend who was curious about his change, "You know that feeling after a great night out? The laughter, the thrill, the exhaustion, you wake up and it's gone. But when I pray, that peace stays." That's what made all the difference. They had traded temporary highs for lasting peace. They had left behind the illusion of freedom for the reality of submission. They had discovered that Islam wasn't the end of fun. It was the beginning of meaning. Years later, both would look back and smile at how far they'd come. Anna married a Revert brother she met at a charity event. Together, they ran community projects, helping others find the same light. James became a youth mentor, guiding young men who felt lost between two worlds. Their lives weren't perfect, but they were purposeful. Every prayer, every challenge, every act of kindness became a step closer to the peace they once searched for in the dark. And so, the story continues, not just for James and Anna, but for thousands across Britain. In the glow of the city lights, there will always be people dancing, laughing, drinking, trying to forget their emptiness. But somewhere nearby, there will also be someone sitting quietly on a prayer mat, whispering words that heal the heart. Because the truth is simple. People don't leave nightlife for Islam out of fear. They leave it because they've seen what the world can offer and found something greater. It's not about rejecting joy. It's about discovering real joy, not about losing life, but finally living it. So when you see someone walking away from the noise, don't think they're missing out. Maybe, just maybe, they found what the rest of the world is still looking for. And as the night falls again over London, the lights glitter, the crowds cheer, the music plays. But somewhere in a small apartment, a man who once chased that same life stands in prayer, whispering softly, "Alhamdulillah." He smiles. The night no longer owns him. He has found his peace, and with it his purpose.